We're about to get started. It's funny how it all of a sudden becomes quiet just as you reach for the microphone. Thank you, everyone. This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors of the Education Service Center and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WIBD, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. I'm going to pause to ask Superintendent Wimmer to confirm that this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We recognize a quorum of our board present. We have 6 members present tonight. Board member John Donaldson has an excused absence, so we look forward to seeing him at the next meeting. Next on our agenda is the approval of this agenda, which was posted in advance. I'd move to approve this agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. We have a motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. We move on to what I think is the board's most favorite agenda item always, which is recognition. And I understand we have our West and East athletic directors, Aaron Felper and Molly Hanks, who are going to kind of tag team. First, we have a state recognition for boys swim and dive.
Thank you for having us tonight, and I'm super excited to be recognizing our amazing student athletes and coaches. So we will call up Coach Jim Soxie, our head boys swim coach, and Coach Pete DeTunk, our head diving coach. And all of you lovely athletes. Yes.
Please come forward.
You guys get up there.
Sure. If you guys want to stand kind of to the side of the podium here and face us, so that those who are watching on camera can get a very good look at the entire presentation. Please proceed.
Okay. First of all, I want to congratulate all the fall and winter sports teams and athletes who made it to state and the accomplishments they were able to achieve during their seasons. This is Coach Pete DeTunk, our outstanding diving coach. He's been with me a very long time. He dove when I was the East boys head coach, graduated in 1987, second place at conference. State. First place at conference, right? Senior year, a couple times. And has just done an awesome job throughout the years getting our divers ready. My assistant coach is Jen Meyer. She decided to stay seated and support us from there. She's been doing an outstanding job. She's in her second season with me. Actually, she started as a parent of 3 boys. That was a long time ago. Yeah. So it's just great to have 2 outstanding coaches helping me. I need lots of help. Thank you to the board, the school board, for recognizing the boys swim and dive team today for the outstanding season we were able to accomplish this year. We had 6 young men make it to the Division I state meet this year, 2 divers and 4 swimmers. And Pete has let me, I'm just going to go right through what their accomplishments at state were, and then I have a few little comments at the end. We have Frankie Schatz, senior, this little dude here. He came out and had only 7 weeks with the team, so not very long. He placed 16th in diving. That is quite the accomplishment of this outstanding athlete. Joel Walter, Jr., placed 11th in diving. It's his first year diving. And then we go to Weston Keppert, Jr. He's one of our swimmers. He placed 12th in the 200 IM. Drew Gundrum, sophomore swimmer, placed 11th in the 200 IM, 6th in the 100 backstroke, so he made the podium. And he is honorable mention All-State in the 100 backstroke. Dawson Walters, sophomore swimmer, placed 8th in the 200 freestyle, which is also honorable mention All-State. 5th in the 100 butterfly, which his time is All-State. Wesley Alith was with those three young men, the 4th on our 2 relays that made it to state. Our 400 freestyle relay was 10th, and our 200 medley relay was 5th place, honorable mention All-State. Our alternate and one of our captains, Weston Keppert is one of our captains also. Ian Wrestler is out viewing colleges today, and he was our alternate and really part of the group of 4. He was the 5th that made our team, top guys, very outstanding. As a team, we took 10th place at state, and the last time I had a team accomplished this feat was in 1996 when I was the head coach for East. At the Division I, we did place a couple of times higher than that when a few years later when we were Division II. The team, not me, set the goal this season to win conference, and that is what they went on to accomplish. We are Triple Crown conference winners. We won the conference relays, so they are conference relays champions. We were undefeated in conference dual meets, 7-0, and the conference meet champion. Each season is unique unto itself, and this season has taken a very special spot in my heart. It took a complete team where together everyone achieves more effort by these amazing young men. I am blessed to coach their parents, coaches, and the school district to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have East Wrestling. And Molly Hengst is going to, hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
Thanks for having us. I will continue on. I get the pleasure of introducing my wrestling coach, Shane Piankowski, and he's going to introduce his fine young men.
Thanks for having us here today. Appreciate the opportunity to recognize these three. So the state tournament honestly didn't go as well as we had hoped when we got there, but still a lot of great things happened this year and a lot to celebrate. So we took 3 wrestlers to the state tournament. This is only the 10th time in school history we did that, so 54 years of history there. We have a junior, Caleb Hillschafer, and then 2 seniors, Liam Pinkuski and Carter Henschel. All 3 of them are team captains, and they've done a tremendous job leading our team. So we like to say we have a wrestling family at East Wrestling, and these guys set the tone and did a great job. So in the 4 years that our seniors have been here, we've had a 34-14 dual record and 22-10 in conference. North Shore Conference is a very, very good wrestling conference. 4 out of the 14 the D1 champs came out of our conference, including 3 guys that are in this room, which you'll hear about later. But just a little bit about these guys. Caleb Hillschafer, so down at the end there. He was our 126-pounder this year. He won 32 matches. He finished first at the Wickersham Beaver Dam tournament, was a North Shore Conference champion and a regional champion. What was impressive about his conference championship is there were 3 state qualifier wrestlers there, and he came out champion there. Caleb finished second at sectionals, qualifying for state and gained some valuable experience there. And he will be a big team leader next year with his brother. So that's Caleb. Carter, right to my left here. These guys put in a ton of work in the offseason. So to be at a state level in wrestling at this point, given where wrestling is in our state, these guys wrestle year-round. So high school season and then at their club. So 2-3+ times per week. So Carter put in that work. He ended up with 37 wins, 22 pins. He led our team in takedowns and near falls, which is when you almost have the guy pinned if you don't know wrestling. And he had a huge win at sectionals, so he beat the number 4 ranked state kid from Beaver Dam to make it to the state tournament. Carter did have a great state tournament. He won 2 matches and unfortunately lost in what we call the blood round. So that is the round where if you win, you place. So he was one of those next guys to place. And he goes out as a 3-time captain for us. He was a captain sophomore, junior, and senior year. He won an individual conference title last year, and he had 108 victories in his career. So an excellent leader for our program. And then finally we have Liam, who has the best last name, right? My son. 3 straight years he fell just short of qualifying for state tournament. He should have made it in the COVID year, which they took half as many wrestlers that year. So in the off season, he really devoted himself going to his club, private lessons, getting better, taking that jump to make it to state this year. He finished with a team leading 43 wins. He won 4 tournaments, the Gunslinger, Herb Tyler Conference and Regionals. He goes out as a 2-time conference champion, including this season. At sectionals, he ended up beating a 2-time state qualifier in a wrestleback to make it to state. And he goes out as the 3rd all-time with a single season team points and 3rd all-time career team points for East. And he finished his career with 131 wins. So these guys are awesome leaders for East Wrestling. Appreciate these guys, love these guys. So it's great we can recognize them.
Congratulations. All right, and next we have recognition for West Wrestling.
I'd like to call up head coach Aaron Spaeth.
All right, thank you for taking the time out of tonight's meeting to recognize the West wrestlers, the East wrestlers, and all the athletes here tonight. It's apparent that the West Bend School District has a lot to be proud of. The West wrestling team had a very exciting year. The team finished 3rd at conference, and we finished as regional runners-up. And these are our 3 captains and have been all year. So we have Ethan Bast, Cole Marisola, and Connor Marisola. I'll share a few words about each athlete. So we'll start with Ethan Bast. Ethan qualified for the state wrestling tournament for the 3rd consecutive year in the 113-pound weight class. Ethan put in a lot of work this offseason and put together a fantastic season, finishing with an overall record of 54 wins and only 4 losses. Ethan entered the state tournament with one goal in mind, and that was to come home as a champion, and he did just that. This was his first state championship, and he returns next year as a senior, and we can't wait till next year to see what he does. All right, next up we have Cole Marisola. Cole qualified for the state tournament for the 4th consecutive year. He finished his season with a 51-1 record and won his 3rd consecutive state title. Unfortunately for the West community, Cole is moving on. However, he's going to continue to wrestle at Penn State University. As a Spartan, Cole had what I would consider a very remarkable and historic career. He finished with 172 career wins and only 7 total losses. Perhaps even more interesting, if you follow the sport of wrestling, he had over 83 career pins. So almost half of the matches that he won in his career, he pinned the guy, which is just remarkable. Finally, we have Connor Marisola. So Connor finished the season with a perfect 51-0 record and won his 4th state championship. Connor is one of only 28 other wrestlers in the state of Wisconsin to join this elite group of 4-time state champions. He has a career record of 174 wins and only 4 losses, and of those 4 losses, not a single one of them was to ever a Wisconsin wrestler, so they were to all out-of-state competitors. So kind of another kind of special thing that Connor did during our high school season, him and his brother both took a weekend off of our competition, and they sought out some Olympic, senior level competition, and Connor also qualified this year to compete in the U.S. Olympic trials that are coming up this spring, which is, as a 17-year-old, it's just not, it doesn't happen very often. So just like his brother, Connor will continue his academic and athletic career at Penn State University. We only went to the state tournament with 3 wrestlers. However, these 3 wrestlers combined with 3 state championships, we actually finished as a team second in the team points, only to the team that ended up winning the team state as well. So, going 12-0 at the state tournament is really remarkable, and the 3 athletes that we did really had an impact on that tournament. I assure you that these 3 young men will continue to reflect excellence in the future. We are excited to have Ethan back for his senior year, and we are enthusiastic to see Cole and Connor at the collegiate level. Thank you for taking the time to recognize these very important athletes.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I've got my papers straight here. Next, we recognize the ski team.
I'm back. We'll call up head coach John Cison of our ski team.
They don't like this. 2 of them are new up here. Thank you to the school board for recognizing all the state qualifiers this evening. We are a little chip in the block in the sports category for West Bend. We are co-op of 10 different schools, including a homeschool. So I just want to give you a couple of facts to put in perspective of what we do and what kind of facts we have for Wisconsin. Basically, in Wisconsin, this year, we had over 1,000 racers in 5 conferences. Out of those 1,000 racers, 350 about made it to the state competition in Mount La Crosse in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Combined with the snowboard teams, it is the largest program, larger than Minnesota and larger than Michigan altogether. In fact, the snowboard and ski championships in Mount La Crosse and La Crosse, Wisconsin is the largest of its kind in the U.S. For conference results, in order to get to state, the girls placed 4th overall out of 23 teams in the Southeastern Conference, and the boys placed 5th overall out of 23 teams in the Southeastern Conference. Both teams qualified for the state championships held at Mount La Crosse and La Crosse on the 18th and 19th of February. It should be known that this is the 24th consecutive time that the West Bend ski team has qualified for the state championships. In Mount La Crosse, we had 2 days of racing with 3 disciplines: slalom, giant slalom, and Super G. The race courses at Mount La Crosse are 3 to 4 times longer and quite a bit steeper than we ski here locally in southeastern Wisconsin. So it is a challenge for these kids. For the girls, unfortunately, we lost our 1st and 2nd seed due to injuries just before state. So we had our 4th, 5th, and 6th seeds compete at state, and they did the best they could, placing 11th overall in Division I with our 4 people. I have here today is Kate Stram, a sophomore from West, and she was part of the state qualifying team. This is also her first time qualifying for state, and individually she placed 134 out of 162 racers. For the boys, we took 7, and 1 was an alternate. They skied strong. The boys had one significant impact to finishing strong. All of them, all of the boys, all 7 of the boys, because one did ski, finished every race, and that makes a huge difference in alpine racing when it comes to team dynamics and standings. While it is not rare, it is not commonplace either. As a result, they placed 3rd overall in Division I, and we also had 1 qualify for nationals as an alternate. The boys also placed well individually. We had a 19th, a 22nd, a 23rd, a 44th, which is Andre Pomola, sophomore at West, second-time qualifier for state championships. We also had a 90th, a 112th, and a 150th, and that is Logan Morris, sophomore at West. Logan is a great example of a beginner his freshman year to proving if you're coachable and you can improve, you can qualify for state. This is only his truly second year of competition, and he qualified for state and placed 150th out of 160 total racers, boys racers. Thank you very much. We appreciate you recognize all these athletes here tonight.
All right, let's see. And next we have our snowboarding team.
Last but certainly not least, Coach Hunter Zaskowski and our snowboarders.
All right, I'm Hunter Zaskowski, the head coach for the snowboard team. This is our assistant coach, Brian Pomeroy. This is his first year coaching with us this year. He raced on the team all 4 years. He was a part of our state team that won 2020. So we're glad to have him, and he's a great kid to have on the team, part of coaching the next generation. So state, John Seeson kind of went over it with skiing. Snowboarding is very similar layout-wise. We race 3 events, slalom, giant slalom, and border cross. It is 1 race per event, and the kids race individually and they race as a team. So for team points, they take top 4 scores for girls, top 4 scores for boys, and they combine those, and that's how they get their team ranks for slalom, giant slalom, and slalom, or border cross separated. They throw it all together, and that is your team overall. So I want to start with the girls. I'll start with Brianna Schabel. She is a senior this year. She placed 2nd place in border cross, 8th in giant slalom, and 12th in slalom, with 6th place overall. Next is Franny Anderson. She's also a senior this year. Raise your hand, Fran. She did 8th in border cross, 11th in giant slalom, and 18th in slalom, with a 10th place overall finish. And then we have Chloe Rummel. She did 3rd place in border cross, 5th place in giant slalom, 6th place in slalom, and finished 4th overall, just barely missing the podium. We also had Addie Turisic and Brooklyn Phillips that both were on our state team for girls. They were unable to make it tonight. For girls overall, there's 41 girls that went to state. I want to say there was over 90 that raced throughout the season, with 41 invited. And 8 teams competed. The girls finished 2nd place as a team on the podium. On to the boys. We have Gavin Schabel. He's a sophomore this year with us. He placed 3rd place in border cross on the podium, 6th place in giant slalom, and 10th place in slalom. He ended up getting 5th place overall. And one other thing is, in a week or next Friday, Gavin is headed to nationals in Colorado to compete at the national level with USASA, and I am going out to coach him as well. And then we also have Quinn Benedict, who's a junior this year. He placed 26th in border cross, 34th in giant slalom, and 44th in slalom, putting him 33rd overall. Last but not least for here today is Will Kaiser. He's a junior. He placed 50th in border cross, 30th in giant slalom, and 32nd in slalom, with a 35th place overall. And then we also have Hunter Calloway. He was invited as a part of our state team. Unfortunately, he had an injury like a week and a half before we headed to state, but he definitely gets the recognition because if he would have not got hurt or injured, he would have been there with the team. Boys overall had 61 competitors and 9 teams competing. They placed 5th as a team, and that's everything I got. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to let me recognize everyone, and we appreciate the continued support from the district.
Thank you. I normally like to wrap these up. I think those are all our presentations. I first of all want to be sure I'm not missing anyone. These are amazing accomplishments, and I normally like to kind of wrap up with a couple of comments. There's a lot to say. So, first of all, I'm going to share the board's congratulations really in all of the achievements of all these outstanding student athletes who represented the West Bend School District at the state level. And so as you proceed on, whatever your future may be, your hard work, your dedication, your talent, those are all things that are going to serve you well no matter what your direction is in life. The skills and determination you exhibited, they don't go unnoticed. You've made your district, your families, community extremely proud. And I also want to say thank you to the coaches. I mean, you could hear the pride in their voices, and you've made them proud too. And thank you, coaches, for all of your efforts as well. I also think that we have everyone's accomplishments tonight, absolutely amazing. But just to call out the exemplary performance on the West wrestling team, and Ethan, you've got a senior year ahead of you. That's amazing. Cole, 3-time champion, setting your name is in the record books at the state. And Connor, if I'm right, the Cole Center gave you a standing ovation when you achieved, for the 28th time, I think it is, in state history, 4-time champion. It's amazing. Everyone's accomplishments are amazing. Your accomplishments are exemplary. And we are going to be cheering you on at Penn State and beyond, and wish you nothing but success in the future. So thank you, everyone here, for inspiring us, and thank you for coming tonight. We genuinely appreciate it. Congratulations again. Now, we always encourage everyone to come and attend our public meeting, but we know you have other places to go. So we'll just take a pause as the room clears, and we'll continue with our agenda shortly. Thank you again for coming. Okay, we'll just wait for the room to clear just a bit. Yeah. All right, well, next on our agenda is public participation, and I have no public participation comment cards. I'm just scanning to see if there are any. It looks like there are not. So we'll move on next to our consent agenda. So we have several items on our consent agenda, including minutes of the March 4th, 2024 regular board meeting. We have no contracts, 1 resignation, 1 retirement, and then several other items. Benefits brokerage services agreement renewal. We have an item related to early college credit program course requests, Star College Now course requests, survey services agreement, hazardous boundary addition, and revenues and expenditures in the aggregate through February 29th, 2024. I'll pause. Are there any items that anyone has questions regarding or wish to pull off the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would move to approve this consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melanie. We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We move then on to reports. And our first report is a school presentation regarding early learning. And I believe Matt Durant is going to be leading us in that discussion. Good evening.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, board, again for having me here this evening. Thank you, Superintendent Wimmer, for highlighting all the wonderful things that we're doing in early learning. I want to start with some introductions. Rob Johnson, Melissa Kosenovitz, and Amy Royce are here from the Kettle Moraine YMCA, so thank you for our partnership with you guys. And then we have some new friends in the audience too, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So we have Michelle Villanueva and Gabby Hayden. They're part of the membership experience team with the Girl Scouts of Southeastern Wisconsin. And we have Bridget David, who is the site manager of Camp Silverbrook here in town. So thank you for joining us as well. So I just wanted to remind you, in the fall, we talked a lot about early learning, and we gave you guys some kind of like deeper level instruction about what we do in early learning. Today is the day where we give you some of the results. So I just want to remind you, in early learning, we have 3 different programs kind of under one umbrella. So we have Head Start, we have traditional 4K, and then we have early childhood special education. We purposely, Jamie and I purposely left this slide the same, because we wanted to highlight in October when we met with you, we had 419 students in the program. We currently have 449 students in the program, so we've added 30 students in just 4 to 6 months since we've met with you last. I anticipate probably another 10 to 15 still adding yet this year. This slide is really all about what we do as far as our site improvement plans. So our site improvement plans, again, were pretty ambitious and rigorous for our students. We want 90% of our students to either meet or exceed their targeted benchmarks in both math and literacy. We continue to say that play-based and nature-based are gonna be our core beliefs. We know that that's how 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds learn best, so we wanna make sure that that's part of our rock and our foundation. We want to increase our satisfaction by our staff by 1%, and I'll explain why that is such a small percent when we get to that slide. And then we also want our students really ready to learn when they get to 5K, and a lot of it is around social skills. So we're talking again about how do you make friends, how do you sit on a rug, how do you stay in line, things like that, those readiness skills for 5K. So if you guys recall, again, in October when we met, we were presenting last year's information because we assess a little bit later. Our students are new to school. They've only done school. This is usually the first time. So we assess in November. So at that time, we didn't have any baseline information to share with you, but we do have our baseline information right now. So this is, again, November data. You're looking at the blue columns all the way to the left are going to be students that are below their developmental benchmarks. So what does a 4-year-old need to know in each of those categories? That purple line is going to be meeting their developmental benchmarks. And if there's any teal, which is that furthest to the right, that is exceeding their developmental benchmarks. So again, baseline information. And I'm happy to report that this is what our growth looks like. So in early learning, we assess 38 different objectives. We specifically target 18 of those 38 because we know that transition is most important as we move from 4K to 5K. And of those 18, we highlighted 3 for you. And I want you to know we didn't just cherry pick like our best ones. Jamie and I picked these because we believe that these 3 are critically important for, again, future learning. So the first one, we picked 1 in each kind of category for our site improvement plans. So at the beginning of the year, we had 71% of our students in print concepts, either meeting or exceeding their grade or their age level expectations. At mid-year, there is 100% already. So when we have 100% at mid-year, we don't just kind of like, okay, we're done for the year. What we do is we stretch them then. So there's a lot more kids that are meeting that we can then push into that exceeding category so that we can, again, get them even more ready for 5K. Counting is going to be our math skill. Again, really good growth, and then follows limits and expectations. That's kind of in that behavior realm. Again, we have about 20%. So I could say kind of across all the board, roughly 20% growth in all of our target areas, and we expect another 20% by the end of the year to meet that 90% threshold of meeting or exceeding. So in this area, this was our employee engagement results. And as I said, we aimed very low because statistically we had to be careful. So in the first question, it says, I feel very well satisfied with my job. Last year, we had 97.1% of the staff saying they were very satisfied with their job. In our site improvement plans, we indicated that a 1% growth because statistically, as you know, we were kind of at that top, and to get any more than that would be very challenging. So Jamie and I felt sad for about 30 seconds when our score went down, but then we went, wait a minute, 86% of our staff are very, very pleased with working here. And as you can see across all of our highlighted areas, our staff are still really engaged employees. Dr. Temez was just at our building, and I think he saw that firsthand when we're outside playing, when getting really engaged with our friends. So in the fall, you guys as a board asked Jamie and I, what's next for early learning? So I'm happy to report, as I said, we made some really good growth in this area. So this year, our Y team, with Amy's support, has done lots of field trips to the Girl Scout camp, Camp Silverbrook here in town. So one time a month, the kids would take an all-day field trip out to that site, get to experience something kind of seasonally. It was all nature-based again, and this has been a relationship that we've seen grow, and we're excited about that potential for growth in the future. Like all of our partners, right, it's a two-way partnership. So not only are we gonna be at Camp Silverbrook next year, 2 days a week for one of our sites, which is Trinity Lutheran. We chose Trinity Lutheran because it's more of a landlocked site in comparison to some of our other sites that have more access to nature-based activities. But it's also that, we're gonna help support the Girl Scouts and their enrollment too, because we wanna make sure that they're a healthy organization just as they're helping us be a healthy organization. So we're really looking forward to that collaboration. Again, thank you for being here tonight and supporting us in that. So we're excited to have that connection, and thank you again for supporting us. Thank you, Superintendent Wimmer, for supporting that as well. We are gonna be offering food service at all of our locations next year. This is a change. We've never done that before, but we know that having that good start to your day is really, really critically important. You're going to hear later when Superintendent Wimmer and I talk about some of the other Head Start action items. Having that quality food to start your day can really impact the rest of your life when you're making those healthy choices. So we want to try that, and we'll be reporting, at our next board meeting like this of how that's going. Tom says that he can make it happen here in food service because, as you know, we serve lots of different locations and lots of sites. We still have things to figure out, like at nature-based locations, we got to pack a picnic lunch, right? So we're going to work on some things like that. Alignment of program times and hours has been something that's really important to 4K and 3K. Right now, we all have parents that call us and say, when does my kid start school? And we have a long list of start and end times, and that can be confusing to families. So this is a way for us to help families kind of get a better alignment across sites. So we are working with Mr. Sarno and our transportation contracts with Right Way to try and figure out what is the best start and end times so that we can fit that in kind of a fiscally sound way. We know that program-wide, we're going to go to a 3-hour day. We're currently at 2 hours and 45 minutes. Gives us a little wiggle room for that food service time for next year. As I said at the beginning, our enrollment projections remain strong for next year. So we keep data like where we are week to week from historical to now. We're right on track. We have roughly 220, 230 students already enrolled for 4K for next year. So we suspect either the same or slightly larger size than we've had last year. Our 4K Head Start is already full, which is also something that we're going to talk about later in the action items. So very healthy, kind of robust enrollment as well. So with that, Jamie obviously is not able to be here tonight, so she's probably watching online, so we'll say hi to Jamie. But she really wanted to be here to, again, talk about all the wonderful things that we're doing in early learning. We hope if you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain those.
Great, thank you. What questions does the board have? Any questions? First of all, I want to thank you for the presentation, and thank you to our community partners for coming, for all of your support as well. It means a lot. Thank you so much. And it sounds like later on we'll be talking about the enrollment, because I'd say that's a very pleasant surprise. So I think we have that coming up
Yes.
later on in some of the other items.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. All right. Kurt, any questions? All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kurt, you made eye contact. Sorry about that. All right. Thank you. All right. Next on our reports is the Policy Committee report, and I will give the Policy Committee report. So the committee met on March 12th. We reviewed a number of items. First of all, we reviewed potential policy language regarding metal detector usage, and we're going to continue to refine recommendations for policy language and look at procedures that would accompany any new policy, so more to come on that. We also looked at revisions to Policy 660. 660 has to do with financial management and internal controls. And the recommended changes to this policy were recommended by our outside auditor. And the policy today talks about references to controls around the review of an audit of federal funding. And the changes that we're looking at really would be to amend that to also include state funding as well. So we'll see that in the future as well. Also, Policy 346, we updated an exhibit, or are looking at updating an exhibit regarding the testing opt-out form. So this is for parents to complete, to opt out of certain testing, and in particular, removing, if I remember right, the old assessment, which is Aspire, Superintendent Wimmer, I think, and then adding the new one, or a newer one, which is Pre-Act.
Yeah, it was just updating that form to reflect the assessments that are currently given. So that's already updated and online.
Great, thank you. And then Policy 187, we're really not changing the policy, but there are some policy number references that need to be updated. And then that preamble that I read for public participation, or the board president reads, we're thinking about moving that to an administrative rule. So that very minor tweaks need to be made. For instance, that preamble says, in the back of the room are the forms to fill out. Well, one day if we're in a different room and it's on the side and we want to update it, we need a little more flexibility. So policy itself not to change, just the preamble moving to an administrative rule. And then lastly, we reviewed the policies in the 400 series, and that relates to student policies, entrance, attendance, graduation behavior, student welfare. So we're going to work through a few revisions at the committee level and then bring those forward also for a first reading. Any questions that I can answer on the policy committee? All right. We then move to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Wimmer.
Sure. This morning, we started our morning with a commendation from County Executive Josh Showman. He presented Connor Mirasola, who we met earlier, with a commendation from the county in honor of winning 4 state titles in wrestling. So it's quite an accomplishment to take first at all, let alone to do it 4 years in a row. At the event, Mr. Showman made reference to how important teammates are in wrestling, and also congratulated Cole for his earning 3 state titles, as well as Ethan for placing number 1. So we just appreciate the acknowledgement of what a special accomplishment that is for any of the students to take first. I know that our swim and dive students were leaving here and going to their banquet, and our wrestlers were going to receive accolades at the city as well tonight for their accomplishments. So just thank you for the entire community and their recognition of our students and their representation of West Bend. A reminder to families, our summer school registration for all grade levels is now open. There's a variety of classes available to students 4K through grade 7, some in person, some virtual, also available at high school levels. So in August, there are Jumpstart events. Those are anyone transitioning to a new school, new grade level. Those are kind of get in, get acclimated. So I would encourage everyone to check out our website, call with any questions, and make sure you're registering for those events as they come up. If you haven't been to the Hub lately, please do so before March 29th. Our student artwork is on display. Check out the pieces by students at Silverbrook, Badger, East, and West, as well as other schools in Washington County. So March is Youth Art Month. So it was part of a larger show. Awards were given out last weekend, so you can see which pieces were honored. You can see that on our Facebook as well, but we encourage you to check it out in person while it's still hanging. Our final drills were completed in all of our schools, as well as our Education Service Center were recertified as Heart Safe Schools by Project Adam and Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. So this recognition and certification was started in 2017 by our district nurse, Amy Brager. Each school has an emergency medical response team. They train together, they learn CPR, how to use an AED in the event of sudden cardiac arrest. Our teams held drills with an actual emergency response scenario. They need to call in to dispatch. They have to work with actual emergency responders who report in an ambulance. Both Amy Brager, the district nurse, as well as West Bend Fire Department Captain monitor all the drills and assess performance. So just a thank you to the staff members who serve on our school response teams. Also a thank you to West Bend and Jackson Dispatch and emergency personnel, as well as police and fire departments for their assistance in the drills. That kind of application is key in keeping those skills sharp. So we appreciate that collaboration. A few student events this week. The high school students will showcase their talent at a talent show tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. I'm looking forward to seeing many talented students perform. I never look forward to, I was asked to be a judge for the East Dance team, and I'm a judge tomorrow, and you just want to pick everyone. To say that we have talented students in our district in all avenues of performance is an understatement. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on Wednesday evening, you can watch the high school and Badger choirs. They're holding a concert in the high school auditorium beginning at 7 p.m. And on Thursday, 6:30 p.m. is the Rock and Jazz Fest featuring jazz bands from Silverbrook, Badger, and the high school. So that's also in the auditorium. So some amazing showcases of talent to see this week. And just a reminder that last year we partnered with West Bend Area Chamber of Commerce for the All Around the Bend Business Showcase. On April 13th from 10 to 3, we'll be hosting the second annual showcase in the West Bend High School's Field House. The event is free. The community is invited. It features a bustling exhibit floor where attendees can engage in face-to-face with local businesses and organizations, look at unique products, make some purchases from pop-up shops and more. And again, many of our student groups will be performing throughout the event. So we would encourage you to attend as well. And again, that's April 13th from 10 to 3. That's all I had for my report.
Very good. Any questions for Superintendent Wimmer? All right, so we move then to action items. There are a number of action items related to Head Start, and I think Superintendent Wimmer and Mr. Durant are going to tag team on these. Now, just as a matter of background, Superintendent Wimmer, when you and I met to talk about where should we put these on the agenda, because some of these this board has seen before and they're rather routine, and we talked about putting them in the consent agenda, and then we thought, well, Mr. Durant and Jamie Malsa might be here presenting, and thought, well, that's a little awkward to approve them all and then have them come and do a presentation. So we have them here. So some will look very familiar, but we'll be looking for action items on each of these and approval,
we're
correct?
going to do both discussion and action. Again, these are procedural. You have an additional counsel. Melanie Ergot is the board representative who works with Jamie Malsum, who oversees the program for Head Start. They have a separate counsel, but Head Start does require that these be acted upon at the board level. So even in our executive summary, you can see she has to submit the executive summary and get a signature. We have to submit our minutes, all of those things for compliance. And it's also a little bit easier because the heavy lifting, as you said, was a little bit last spring. You can remember us going back and forth on the wording and her getting feedback, having to make some corrections. So we're actually in the second year of these pieces. So again, largely procedural. We are going to do our best to answer questions. We have our phones with us. I'm sure Jamie's watching us. She knows to text us if we're missing something or if we get stuck. But Matt and I are certainly going to try and fill her shoes tonight. She unfortunately was ill and really has no voice to even kind of give a shout out to her staff. So we're gonna carry that water for her this evening. So that first item, as you said, is the Washington County Head Start Bus Monitor Requirement Waiver. So again, this is procedural. The piece that we're signing off and waiving, so to speak, is that we don't put consistent riders on the bus every single day. One, we would have to kind of move and make less seats available, because as you can imagine, the majority of our funds are going towards putting quality staff in front of students and having as many seats open as possible. Everything would have to be paid for out of that grant. If we did that in that manner, it would actually reduce the amount of service we could provide within the county. So we choose to do a couple different things. So certainly during startup, you've got some ridership going as kids get acclimated to new routines, riding buses for the first time, and then they'll do some kind of spot checks and riders throughout the year so that they can reinforce expectations. So there are no concerns about not having those riders. We've not had that. Again, we would seek action that you formally accept the waiver for that.
Any questions on the Head Start bus monitor waiver? Hearing none, I would move to approve the Head Start bus monitor waiver as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kurt. Motion and second to approve the Head Start bus monitor waiver as presented. Final discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we move to the Head Start selection criteria.
We're trading up a little bit.
Switching spots. All right, the selection criteria. So we talked briefly about enrollment and it being strong. The Head Start has 121 federally funded spots. Roughly half of those are 4K spots and the other half are 3K spots. There is automatic entry into the program if you are income eligible. So to be automatically enrolled, there's certain criteria such as you're a family in transition, a family in foster care, a kinship. A lot of families meet based on the federal income poverty guidelines. So those are a couple of ways that you can auto enroll into the program. We also carry a wait list. So like we do this year, we have maybe 10 to 15 students on a wait list. And the way that we rank them on the wait list is with a prioritization tool. So that tool gives students points based on some of their background information. So if you have a family that has served in the military, you receive a certain number of points. If you are a student with a disability, you receive a certain number of points. And then we rank them that way, and then we pull off of the wait list based on that prioritization tool. Any questions on that?
Just out of curiosity, just generally speaking, I think it's great that we see a surge in interest. Are there any factors that explain it, or is it more just the randomness of year-to-year enrollment?
I think that I can say in early learning overall, we do have some unique program options. I'm thinking about our YMCA partners here. You know, it's hard to find access to quality childcare, and having that partnership both for Head Start and for 4K, I think that carries a lot of weight. So it does draw families into our program that way. Certainly, just having an option for families at that 3K level, especially because there's just not a lot of options at that level.
Other questions?
I do want to mention too, so
Please.
if you are a 4K student and we are currently full and we'll put you on the wait list for Head Start, we are still going to offer you traditional 4K. So we want to make sure that it's not just that you're sitting on a wait list, you also have a place to be until your wait list time comes up.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Superintendent Wimmer.
I just have another one from the peanut gallery at home, noting that SNAP is an automatic eligibility piece, which helped enrollment. So that's from Jamie.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'd move to approve the Head Start selection criteria as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Motion and second to approve the Head Start selection criteria as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We move then to Head Start community and self-assessment.
Matt and I are going to tag team just a smidge on this one, but all the pieces for the Head Start program start with a self-assessment, and that is a required piece, but it really sets the pace to kick off for planning for next year. And again, it also starts with a survey. Both staff and families participate in that survey, and that helps drive to assess what are the needs and desires, and what do we need to be responsive to in our planning. Go ahead. So in this slide, and again, these slides are the same that you've seen in the past, so I'll highlight when they're updated. But this is helping you to see the why, and again, framing how to be responsive to the needs that we're seeing. So those needs may shift annually, and we'll highlight a few of those. But again, this is setting us up in that assessment phase. This is one of those slides that was updated. So feedback on strengths, again, you got to hear a little bit more about some of the other components of our early learning program. It's something that we're really proud of. And two, for those who may not know in the audience, there are not many districts who actually run the County Head Start as well. We're one of the few who do that, and we're proud to do so. So there's considerable strengths. One of the pieces that was added in addition to the inclusive classrooms was dual language supports. They're just seeing that as a piece that they needed to be responsive to. So that was the only update in those pieces, that they've expanded those supports based on student need. Okay. And then when you look at the opportunities, one of the things that was talked about in the past, I said I'd kind of highlight those nuances. We had healthy food options in the past. You heard Matt talk about food being prepared and available on site. There was also some goals connected to reduction of obesity, which we are seeing that reduction and maintaining those. So new to this piece was that program alignment that Matt spoke to around aligning those times, aligning opportunities, creating some access to some wraparound care, all of those pieces. So that's new into their opportunities that are in front of them. Go ahead. And again, that leads to some goals for improvement. So I'm going to connect kind of the past and the goals that she has on the screen. So I foreshadowed in that healthy food options. There was some targeted piece around continuing to reduce obesity with our youngest students. That is still something that they work on, and they are seeing those reductions. But you can see in that other goal, they're expanding health options. So focusing not just on the nutrition piece, but you can see the physical, oral, mental health services for students and their families. In the past, there was goals around involvement for our families, and you can see growing to comprehensive family engagement still remains. And then you saw last year in the goals that extension around programming, wraparound services, and we talked about that program alignment and some of those other access points, helping diminish the need for that. So you see these two goals moving forward for the improvement plan. Are there any questions on what we've presented so far? That just gives Jamie a chance to answer. So you heard Matt talk about the enrollment piece. So don't let the fact that we are full in Head Start sway you. We still have plenty of opportunities for early learners in our district, whether it's the 3-year-old program. I'd encourage you to reach out quickly, that we are starting to see that get full. So again, we do have programming available for 3-year-olds as well as the traditional 4K. So check out those opportunities on our website, connect with one of our program administrators to seek information and ask more. And then they always end with their amazing early learning teams and the staff who are behind all the service and support for our students and families. And I would echo those accolades as Jamie would present them too. Oh, look, we did get something. I feel like we're Oscar presenters and like we're sliding each other. She said we're doing great so far, and there is nothing to add, Mr. Durant, so.
Fantastic.
Right. I'm like, clearly he needed to read that. So, no, we just, again, can't even do justice to what Jamie would present on point, but I know that she would stand before you and talk about the amazing things that we're doing on behalf of students, on behalf of families, and then also she would only credit the team that you see in front of you for providing that.
Fantastic. Any questions on the community and self-assessment? Hearing none, I would move to approve the Head Start Community and Self-Assessment as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melanie. Motion and second to approve the Head Start Community and Self-Assessment as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We move then to the Head Start Basic Grant refunding application.
All right, thank you. So the refunding application is exactly what it says. Every year of so right now we're in year 2 of a 5-year cycle for the grant application. We have to renew certain elements of it. So if you look through the refunding application, it was quite long in your board docs, but the goals have remained the same. So a lot of what you're gonna see remains the same in our program. This slide indicates kind of all the different pieces that Head Start requires as checking off so that we can submit that refunding application. The refunding application includes a budget for how many personnel will be in the program, and then it includes also training and technical assistance. So that's also part of your, I don't want to jump ahead, but part of your action items is also training and technical assistance, which is letter E for you guys. So the training and technical assistance is on the next slide, which really is just Head Start's way of saying, how do we provide coaching? How do we provide professional development to our staff? Earlier in our presentation, we talked about how much growth we've seen in literacy. It's because this year all of our professional development happened to be in literacy. So you would expect that kind of rapid growth in that area. So there's dollars set aside to make sure that that professional development does occur as well. Any questions on the refunding application? And you probably want to do them separately.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? Then I believe a motion would be in order to approve the Head Start Basic Grant refunding application as presented. Is there a second? Thank you, Chad. Motion and second to approve the Head Start Basic Grant refunding application as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. And we are to the Head Start Training and Technical Assistance Plan.
Correct, yeah. So like I just said, that is essentially professional development for Office of Head Start.
That's $17,095, correct?
That is correct.
All right, very good. Any questions from the board on that item? Hearing none, I would move to approve the Head Start Training and Technical Assistance Plan as presented. Is there a second? We'll give that one to Kelly. Thank you. It was like a tie. Motion and second to approve the Head Start Training and Technical Assistance Plan as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you, we appreciate it. And our thanks to Jamie as well for all of her work and her work tonight.
Yes.
And we hope she's feeling better soon. And thank you to you as well. Thank you. All right. Our next discussion, our next action item, I believe, correct, is policies for third reading. So we had a number of those, and Superintendent Wimmer, I believe you're going to walk us through that. And these are items we'd seen before.
Sure. We have several policies for revision. So recall that 119 high school configuration is simply to update the number in alignment. The two nepotism policies, 165.2, there's nepotism specific to board members. There is also one for employees. That's garnered a lot of discussion, and we anticipate potential to probably separate those. Mr. Rebholz, I know that you've been very clear around your feelings around that. So I do have consideration for the board, some separate motions on those so that you can separate those from each other and from the others. So looking at that, then there was 870 public complaints, replaces 872, and then 167 public complaints regarding school board members specifically. And then we have 2 policies recommended for removal, 872 citizen complaints. Again, we've replaced that with some language as noted above, as well as 887 relations with tax incremental finance district. So you have a few that I think that you are ready to act on, maybe a couple that you might want to separate because we anticipate either some continued discussion or the ability to vote no on some separate ones, as well as those for removal.
Very good. I don't know if the board has preference one way or the other. Kurt, maybe we can talk about, I know, and thank you for your being transparent over the last several meetings about concerns that you have or thoughts with regard to nepotism. I see you reach for your microphone, so I just wanted to turn it over to you for thoughts and comments.
Yeah, thank you for the third reading and the comments, Superintendent. I've thought about it more and looked at what I consider facts and figures, and I do have a problem with the policy 165-2, nepotism on the board, and the policy 533-2. And at the appropriate time, I would make a motion to remove those policies. And I'm just going to say why again. I'll say I'm in the private sector, 50-employee company, probably 4 or 5 relations from cousins to some nieces to, and they're quality people. And if I didn't have them in my company, I wouldn't be where I was today. And then I relate that to the district, and my kids have went through this district. There's so many great teachers that have great families. There's so many administrators that have great families and kids. I know some that have went into teaching. I know some that are in teaching in other districts. And to me, this is just too restrictive. I can see some immediate, but when we go down to cousins and nieces and nephews, these big families in West Bend it's driving people away. So I don't know what, and I state again, I've stated consistently, this has never been an issue. The last board meetings, I've said it, I've had nobody come to me with having any problems that you're out of line, Kurt. So with that feedback, I'll be making a motion at the appropriate time to remove those policies. And I do not support those policies. So if nobody's in agreement with me, I would like them separated then.
Well, I think administratively, unless there is an objection to the board, we can address these separately to kind of accommodate those. So Kurt, would you have an objection if we said we could move forward with approving the revisions to policies 119, 870, and 167. I think those were the 3 other ones besides nepotism, right? So if and 872 and 887. Yes, and 872 and 877 would be for removal. And so I think we could combine that motion. So Kurt, unless you would object, maybe we can start by kind of clearing the field a little bit to kind of narrow down the field a little bit. So if it's all right, I would make a motion to approve policies 119, 870, and 167 as revised, as well as removing policy 872 and 887 as presented. Superintendent Wimmer is nodding. Okay, double checked. All right, that would be my motion. Would there be a second?
I would second that.
Very good. All right, thank you, Chad. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the changes to 119, 870, and 167, as well as the removal of 872 and 887. Any final discussion on that? All right, I'll call the motion then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. All right, so now we have left policies 165.2, which is nepotism for the board, and 533.2, nepotism for employee. And so I'll just say, Kurt, thank you. I totally understand your point. A couple of the reasons that I'm comfortable with the revisions. First of all, I think it mirrors statutory language nicely. The second is, and I understand your concern too, the last thing we want to do is create a roadblock for people to apply or be considered for promotion. I think the way that these policies are written, and maybe Superintendent Wimmer can confirm this for me, my thought is it doesn't prevent folks from being hired or promoted. It more so has to do with the process under which that happens, to make sure that there isn't a relative making the promotion decision or a relative making the other. So that's why I would be comfortable with it. But Kurt, I understand there's also logic to the idea of why have any speed bumps if we don't think speed bumps are necessary. So I acknowledge that would be my reason for moving forward. But I respect your point. So.
Make your motion.
That being said, Kurt, why don't you make your motion,
Yeah,
please?
I'll say one more thing before I make the motion.
Absolutely.
Just because in reading the policies, again, I could be wrong, but say you're the head of HR, say you're the head of finance, say you're the head of the superintendent, say you're on the board. I mean, to me, this is very restrictive, and it opens ourselves up for some legal challenges, I believe, with some gray area so that's why I'm going to make a motion to remove policy 165-2, nepotism, and policy 533.2, nepotism employee-wise, from our policy.
Very good. Superintendent Wimmer?
I just want to clarify. So you can't, in this one swift action, remove it from all of policy. You can remove it from action from this agenda on that, because to remove it formally from all of policy, you'd have to have multiple readings and all of that. So what you're asking the board to do is remove it from consideration and action this evening, so that it is not acted on.
Okay, sure.
Move it to
Send it back to the policy committee for review. So in other words,
I would assume consideration for full removal.
yeah.
Yes.
okay.
I'm going to second that motion for Kurt because I believe that he's been very transparent, and I believe that this deserves to come to a vote. I think it deserves to be voted on, because if we don't second the motion, there's no vote.
Absolutely, yep. So you're seconding it so it moves forward for vote.
Second, so it moves forward for a vote so that it can have a vote.
Absolutely. So we have a motion and a second in support of removing policies 165.2 and 533.2 from consideration tonight. Right, okay, excellent. Any questions on that? So I will call the motion for that. All in favor of that?
I think some final discussion on
Oh,
that.
absolutely, yes, final discussion, please.
So
Chad?
I just want to say that I believe it deserves to come to a vote, because I think it's something that's a very reasonable thing to say. He's been very transparent about what he's been looking for, and I agree with his sentiment as far as what you've been against as far as these policies go. Having been on the policy committee with these, though, and having this had been an issue prior to me even being on the board, which is now almost a year, these really do. I think it's appropriate for us to have a nepotism policy, and I think your understanding of them being maybe too restrictive, I certainly understand that, but I don't think the way it's written, I don't feel, like Chris said, that there will be any barriers, because everyone can still have those positions. You just can't have an immediate supervisor who's in that role to make that decision, and every position has an accountable secondary option. So none of those positions, if your only option is to have, the head of HR oversee you, there is a position, there's a policy in place that allows for an adjacent person to be that person's supervisor, so they could still take that role. So that it wouldn't be like, well, I've hit this roadblock, there's no one to supervise me except a relative. There is provision to have that allowable. And so because of that, I think after a year of writing and rewriting, this policy already existed. It's just become a little bit more refined and a little more reflective stature. I think that I respect your motion, and I seconded your motion, but I think my feeling is it's time to just put this to bed, and I think it's relatively clean and not restrictive as far as limiting people's options. I think it's broader and more specific than it necessarily needs to be, but I don't think it restricts anything ultimately. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thanks.
Great. Good discussion. Any other questions or discussion? So we have a motion and second on the table. And again, just to be clear, what the motion would do is remove from consideration tonight policies 165.2 and 533.2. Kurt, this is your motion. I hope I've got it stated correctly. Thank you. All right, thank you, sir. I will now call the motion. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no.
No.
No. We'll register that vote, Mr. Rebholz as aye, the remainder as no. That motion does not carry. But we thank you again, Kurt, for putting that on the record. Much appreciated. I'd move to approve the modifications to policies 165.2 and 533.2 as presented. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. We have a motion and second to approve modifications as proposed to policies 165.2 and 533.2. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
We'll register Mr. Rebholz as a no, the remainder as aye. That motion carries. And I'll just pause again, and I so much appreciate the cordial nature that our board talks through these items. Thank you so much for everyone's professionalism and for sharing your opinions on this important issue. Having concluded, that was our last action item. We move then to discussion items, and the first discussion item is 2024-2025 staffing plan priorities. And Mr. Lenny Hansen is going to walk us through that item. Mr. Hansen, good evening.
Good evening. So this presentation and the discussion that takes place around staffing plan, this is an annual tradition for us this time of year. Staffing is by far the largest cost that the district has in terms of both wages and benefits. And being in the business of education, that is a people business. So we are highly dependent upon people to carry out the mission of the district, and we can't do it without all of those individuals filling those important roles. So setting the staffing plan to achieve that mission is one of the most important things that happens every year. What we're gonna do tonight is talk about the general process as well as some that goes into developing the staffing plan. We're gonna talk a little bit around some of the things we've accomplished in the current year's staffing alignment as well as some previous years. We'll then talk about the implications enrollment has on this process, some important budgetary considerations. We'll talk a little bit around staffing adjustments that have taken place since 2020, and we'll get into why that's an important time frame to really understand. And then we'll get into the priorities that we're looking at as we set the staffing plan for next year. That will all lead into work that takes place in this room with the board next month, where the actual plan itself will be presented, discussed, and then submitted for approval. So it's an overview of where we're going tonight. So the three items you see here, they don't change from year to year. The things that drive our decisions around staffing come down to what are our student needs, what is our enrollment, and what does the budget support. Now, when we talk about student needs, that can mean a lot of different things, but to really simplify it for our understanding and really break it down to three different areas here. You've got academic supports, you've got student services supports, and then you have ensuring fair access to education. Academic support can mean all sorts of different things, and I list a few examples there in terms of that's where you might talk about ratios of staff to student. You talk about certified staff, support staff, as well as building level and district level supports. Ultimately, it all comes down to who has that contact with the learner. And you see in that graphic our teachers, our building staff, and then who are those additional layers that support the success of those individuals. So let's talk a little bit about what we've been able to accomplish, especially during the year we're currently in, but also during the last few years. So some of the academic support accomplishments we were able to achieve with the most recent staffing plan is we continue to maintain the large variety of student programs and opportunities in our district. I think it's one of the things that probably is potentially the greatest point of pride in our district is the variety of offerings provided to students, and we continue to be able to maintain that through this year. We have really adjusted our elective staffing to meet where student preferences go. That can mean all sorts of different things. One of the things that we talk about a lot is our career and technical education program. We have definitely one of the largest in the state of Wisconsin. It's a big point of pride for us. You're talking about technical education, business education, family consumer science. We have huge programs in those areas and others, and we're very good at being nimble and responding to where student registrations are going to meet those needs. Once again, we continue to stay within our historical class size ranges that we've had in the district. From the student services side, we have maintained or even expanded the recent increases in a variety of areas. These are some. I'll get into more as we go on, but when you think about the needs of our students who perhaps have the greatest level of need in the system, special education staff, school psychologists play a critical role there. Additional supports in terms of family liaisons, our behavioral coaching model, which has been very successful for multiple years now, as well as meeting the needs that our parochial schools have in terms of the support they require from us in terms of providing evaluation support for special education and direct service. So it's always important to remember that we serve our entire community, whether that's in our buildings or oftentimes within our partners in the parochial area as well. When we think about the access to education, there's a lot of things that can mean, but some of the highlights is we have in the recent years increased our support for our English language learners, and we were able to maintain that this year. We've also, for multiple years running, increased our support for alternative education programs, both in the form of certified and support staff. And that's really in response to student need and the need for different types of programming to meet the different needs of varying learners. We've also increased tutoring support, and then we've maintained a really strong and growing virtual program special education support as well. So then we talk about enrollment, and we all are well aware that this district, like most districts in Wisconsin, is experiencing a declining enrollment trend, but that doesn't mean it's declining everywhere. So this graph here looks ahead to what enrollment is projected to look like next year in the school district. This is by grade level. We don't include kindergarten on this chart because obviously the registrations are still coming in, but you can see here 1st through 12th grade. And what you see is that our declining enrollment bubble, when we enter next year, will have progressed completely through 8th grade, where really the high school will be the final building that's looking at measurable declining enrollment in the years after. And that's important for us to realize that we really have plateaued in a lot of ways at those lower levels, and we need to staff appropriately for that. We do anticipate, as we've seen the enrollment trends, having fewer sections next year, but still, again, maintaining those historical class size ranges. But given that we do continue to graduate more than 100 more students than we bring in each year, we do foresee that would mean there would be some reductions in positions, simply keeping pace with where those enrollment trends are. As always, our preferred method of achieving reductions is through attrition, resignations, retirements, and so forth. There is board policy in place if a reduction couldn't be achieved through attrition and we actually needed to move towards layoffs or reductions in force, but we're optimistic that we can achieve most of what is necessary through attrition. So then we want to talk about the budgetary considerations, because if budget wasn't an issue, obviously we would do everything that we could possibly imagine, but we have to deliver a balanced budget every year to this board and to this community. So there's some important things to remember about this. One, you've seen this chart many times, and we're going to keep showing it to you. It's an important chart to remember. This is over time revenue limit increases to the West Bend School District compared to CPI or inflation. So CPI is represented by the red line here, and the blue lines there are cumulative increases in the revenue limit authority granted to the West Bend School District. As Mr. Sarno has talked about several times before you, that is a compounding issue. And while, back in 2011, there was a drop or a rising gap between inflation and that revenue limit, that gap only has continued to widen year after year, to the point that now, if inflation had kept pace, or if revenue limits had kept pace with inflation over that period of time, the district would have access to over $12 million per year in additional revenues. That's prior to 2011, that there really wasn't much of a gap at all, and revenue limits had kept pace with inflation. That just has not been the case since then. That creates various pressures on the budget, but not pressures that we're incapable of managing, and the staffing plan is one of the most important ways that we manage how we address those pressures. We're moving into the second year of a biennial state budget, so we know our revenues for next year, which is always an easier place to start. I already talked about the revenues in relation to inflation, but then an important piece here that we haven't talked about during staffing plan discussions in the past is that federal support, so our ESSER dollars that are available to the district, that will end for all schools across the country on September 30th. So this will be the final, we're going into the final year where you can claim those dollars and utilize them in your district. Those dollars have accomplished a wide range of important activities for the district. As those dollars go away, of which it is several $1 million, as those go away, the district has to adjust its program appropriately to account for that. We've made very effective and efficient use of those dollars, so you can't have that amount of revenue fall off without impact. But the key will be that we still continue to provide those student opportunities, meet student needs, and provide the appropriate supports to do that. We already talked about enrollment, but that enrollment equates to revenue as well for the district. So the decline in enrollment trend also impacts that budget. And it's also important to note that student needs on average have increased since the advent of the ESSER funding, which is going back to 2020. So while our enrollment has decreased, the average amount of additional supports students have needed has increased. And that is a reality that, not just has existed in the West Bend School District, but you hear about it in school districts throughout the state and the country. It's a demand that we will meet. That's our expectation on ourselves, but we have to be mindful of the budgetary considerations around that. So what I talk about for a little bit now, I want to put into big picture context all the really wonderful things we've been able to accomplish since 2020. And the reason I go back there is obviously it is when the pandemic began, but it's also when those ESSER dollars first came into play, and districts had a variety of opportunities to impact student learning and outcomes. And we were really able to accomplish a lot through the staffing process to do that. Over 60 FTE are in the current staffing plan that did not exist prior to 2020. That's a combination of certified and support staff. Those 60 FTE that I talk about there are direct service to students positions. That's not positions that are administrative or have disconnection from students. Those are people that sit down with kids every day, okay? We were able to really infuse a lot of support over the last several years, which is outstanding, and we've had positive outcomes because of that, but at the same time, we had positive outcomes throughout our history, and the ability to adjust to where the funding is something that is our expectation ourselves, and we'll make sure that we reach that as a school district as we move forward in the new revenue environment. We added positions, like I said, providing direct service to students. We utilized our ESSER dollars in a variety of places to accomplish that, while also reducing, over a multi-year period, reducing administrator FTE that fell within that revenue limit. Some of the areas that I can highlight where those FTE went in particular, here you're seeing a number of curricular increases around math or reading intervention, English language support, so forth, alternative education. We talked about the increased needs we've seen, and some of that has been in the area of special education. We made a substantial investment in increased staffing for special education, as you can see here. The psychologist role supports special education significantly, as well as some other areas, so that ties in there as well. So those are real positions, like I said. Those are positions that are having direct contact with students, and we want to take a step back and analyze all of the work we do, right? A lot of those ads provide some incredible value, and simply because the ESSER dollars go away doesn't mean that automatically all of those positions need to go away, right? We want to analyze the value that we gain through all of the positions that we have in the district. And that's really what the next portion of the presentation, which is around setting those priorities, becomes about. So when we look at those priorities, we want to make sure we continue to sustain all of our existing program offerings and opportunities for students. We do need to meet those increased student needs. While those revenues that I talked about are going to fall off, the student needs will still be there and need to be met by the people that we put in front of our students. And then again, delivering that balanced budget is a key priority. As I said, we'll be reviewing all positions, support staff, certified staff, administrative staff, and analyzing student needs with each department, from the curriculum instruction side, student services side, and so forth. We collect input at the building and district level, and then we want to ensure that we maintain those historical class size ranges that we've stuck to for quite some time in the district. As far as when we come back to those academic supports, we're really going to continue to closely watch where student preference and registration is going. You're going to see some areas where, in spite of having declining enrollment, we're going to be increasing FTE, because that's where students are seeing their career paths, whether that might be in technical education or another area. We are going to continue to provide reading and math intervention in all of our schools. We're going to maintain our virtual program offerings and continue the embedded instructional coaching model that has been in place for many years here in the school district. We're going to be able to maintain next year several of the positions that we've added since 2020. When you look at those ads that we reviewed earlier, we want to continue to provide a team-based approach to meeting student needs through a variety of expertise areas, whether that's counselors, psychologists, liaisons. We want to provide that throughout the system. We know that those team-based approaches are the most effective way to support students who have those needs. And we need to be constantly monitoring the in and out of enrollment as it pertains to some of those student needs that have positions that are directly tied to them, such as English language learners and special education. We know, as I said earlier, that our alternative education needs of students has increased significantly over the past several years, and that's not something I think that's unique to West Bend either. That requires us to staff appropriately to meet those needs. We've been analyzing deeply ways to deliver programming in those areas that are efficient but also effective and put high quality qualified staff in front of those students. The reality is we will have fewer positions next year. We want to be crystal clear about that, both based on the enrollment decline as well as that revenue change, okay? We do believe that certified staff layoffs are unlikely, okay? We will be able to say that more definitively next month, but we do believe we're going to be able to find a home for certified staff, even where maybe a reduction over here at this school needs to happen, that we will be able to find an opening at another place where perhaps there's an increase in need, or perhaps attrition is allowing that to take place. Support staff, we will also use an attrition-focused strategy to find a home for everyone we can, but I can't guarantee that there won't be reductions in that area that then we utilize the appropriate board policies to make determinations around. As I talked about, alternative education, work is taking place at the cabinet level and with the student services team to reformulate and think about the best ways to deliver that alternative education program. So next steps in April, we'll bring forward that comprehensive staffing plan that really lists out every position that falls within the revenue limit. We'll bring that forward for discussion at the first meeting of April, collect feedback, and then get that ready for an approval process after that. So a lot of information there, a little bit longer presentation than past years, but those budgetary implications are looming large undoubtedly as we come up with the right arrangement of staff for the coming school year. So I'll entertain any questions you have at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Hanson? We certainly appreciate the preview and more discussion to come, so thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and that closes out our discussion items. I believe that takes us to future agenda items and the board meeting calendar.
If I may,
Of course.
just making sure when we review the board calendar that you may or may not have printed prior to an update.
Oh,
So
okay. I
I'll
may have
go
an
through
old
those
copy.
items, possibly.
Do you mind?
Not a problem.
Thank you.
So coming up tomorrow is the March 19th Curriculum Committee at 4:30 PM here at the Education Service Center. Our regular board meeting is on April 8th, 5:30 PM here again at the Education Service Center. The new item that I was speaking of is an April 10th, 2024 board work session that will be centered around facilities. We'll start a little bit later, 5:45, to accommodate our board schedules. So again, that's an April 10th work session focused on facilities, and then back into regular meetings with April 16th, 2024 Curriculum Committee at 4:30 PM.
Thank you. I'm glad you did that because I know we had talked about the April 10 work session, but I did not have that on my most current list, so thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Wimmer on the calendar? Superintendent Wimmer, I did have one question on the calendar. So we have an election coming up, and like we're gonna be seeing at least one or more different faces. But how does that fold in to the upcoming meetings?
Sure. So all the meetings that I have listed, you'll see all these familiar faces. The new seat, so again, Mr. Reb Holtz, we've got some time to formally thank him for his service and give him some accolades because he's certainly done so for a long time, but it's the fourth Monday. So we lead into that. That's when you officially flip that seat. So Mr. Reb Holtz has not sought another term as a board member, so we thank him for his service. I'm sure we'll do a little bit closer to the time he gets to officially depart. But no, Mr. Reb Holtz, all those meetings on that calendar, you still need to attend.
All on my calendar.
Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Any other questions on the board calendar? All right, hearing none. Any other items then for follow-up and communication? Well, hearing none, we've reached the end of our planned agenda. There is an item that is appropriately discussed in executive session. So I'd move to enter into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and take any such action if necessary based on its discussion, namely compensation and employment. Is there a second? Thank you, Kelly. We have a motion and second to adjourn into executive session. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I will turn to my roll call slips, as this needs to be a verbal roll call vote. I'll call the roll. Mr. Rebholz.
Yes.
And Mr. Swiger votes yes. Ms. Aragot? Yes. Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Dr. Tepez? Yes. Mr. Donaldson is excused absent. And Ms. Kruger? Yes. All right. That motion carries 6-0. It is unanimous. We are adjourned into executive session. Thank you to everyone for attending.